There's a part of the veteran and first responder story nobody wants to talk about. Not the VA, not leadership, not the influencers online. It's the truth that most of us didn't come home emotionally numb. We were trained into it. We were conditioned to shut down feelings so we could function under chaos, to detach so we could survive, to kill empathy so we wouldn't hesitate. And civilians don't understand that because they never had to. But here's the real problem. The same emotional wiring that kept us alive in uniform is the same wiring that destroys our relationships, our connection, and our identity once we get out. This episode isn't about blaming the military or glorifying trauma. It's about understanding the emotional operating system we were given and how it keeps running long after the uniform comes off. Because when the mission ends, the conditioning doesn't. And until we talk about it, nothing changes.
Emotional numbness, it's not something that you're conscious about. We allow it to happen. It is definitely trained. Um, and you get into a mindset where it's like, I got to suppress everything because if I don't, I'm weak. And empathy goes out the window. Um, how we train physically will definitely rewire our emotional reflexes and in our jobs also, depending on what you did. I like to lean on the infantry a lot because that's where you and I came from, and that job requires us to remain emotionally distant to function. We have to remain like that, otherwise we cannot function as a soldier should. And you typically see this in high risk professions, your police officers, your EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, anybody that's in a high risk profession, they're trained to emotionally disconnect so they can function properly. And if you have too much empathy, you're going to hesitate. Too much fear, you're going to paralyze yourself. We've seen the guy that's going to cower behind the rock, not return fire. He's just not going to be able to function properly as a leader because there's so much fear inside of them. And then too much emotion, when it gets down to it, can result in casualties. I mean, I can think back and 5 years ago and see where my emotions were a lot different than what a normal civilian would react to something, or more protective. We carry that leadership mentality, and the mission is so important, and we're trying to protect those around us. We go into this leadership mentality where the mission is everything, and but those are our own emotions, our own fears that somebody else is going to mess up. And if we don't take control, then there's going to be catastrophic failure, is how I view it. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because so many of us, we've spent our time in combat. We've spent time on the line, and where emotional numbness is something that we have to do in order to accomplish the mission. And then we take that emotional numbness, and when we're back in the silence, that's when the emotional numbness wears off, and you catch yourself, drinking or doing whatever you need to continue that numbness.
So my brain's racked over here because now I'm like, we use that word like trained to be emotionally numb. But what my now that I'm thinking about this is like what training do you remember taking on emotional numbness? So like that's my thing is like, so are we trained to do it? Because this goes into every block of conversation we're about to have when it comes to even like conditioning, right? So were we trained to fight in wars and trained to do the job so well that even when the first round got fired, it didn't matter what we thought, felt, whatever the case was. We just knew that we fall back to that first and highest level of training. And that's training to me. And so when we look at training, can training be subconscious and conscious at the same time? Which, for me is yes, it has to be subconscious because nowhere in my time in the military did I ever sit in a classroom or have anybody be like, "Man, you just gotta," like, people say, "Yeah, you just gotta block it out," but that's experience based, right? So, if there's a training block that is built for us to teach me how to use my weapon, like, what is that? Soldiering task level 1, 2, 3, yada, yada, and we can go on and on, right? But it is kinda crazy that, um, that training exists for how to do the job, but not how to be proficient at being non-robotic, I guess. Because the warrior, the protector, the responder, the service member can't service correctly. Like you said, we're holding on to not just this baggage, but this inability um, to maybe understand what we just saw, and it really goes back into like PTSD and all that stuff. Like what is the major reason some people have PTSD? It's usually like guilt, or we go into the idea of like, you know, understanding what I just had to do in the job and then coming home and I only go crazy into this because I literally just had a Bible study last week on Thursday night, and there was a firefighter there talking about, and we were talking about something completely different, but he just decided to come out and say, he pretty much was asking like, what the hell is wrong with me? Um, I must be different, or something must be wrong in my head because I've been doing this for 20 years, he said, and he's seen like burnt babies and so on and so forth, just a lot of terrible things. And he's like, and when I see it and I know it's terrible and I feel it for like a split second and then I shut it off. And he's like, and I don't think about it ever again. And one of the best quotes I ever heard from another soldier many years ago, he said, I'm more upset that I'm not more upset. And does that correlation, or is that maybe not correlation, does that thought process, is that the same for every single one of us? Like, do we hold on to that same thought process? Like, I'm more upset that I'm not more upset about this. And does that trigger more emotional suppression? Because when we look at emotional, like suppressing these things, it's like you said, it's performance based. It's a performance requirement, right? And then so like, I think what ends up happening is we got told that that performance requirement was only a requirement here, but like you said, it's a personality flaw when we're out and about in normal society, and that is obviously from the beginning of the introduction we talk about is like everybody is telling you that it's a problem, it's a personality flaw, and I had to tell this guy next to me like that can't be a personality flaw. Like, what if God just gave you this great gift that you can look at something and be intelligent enough to go, "That's terrible, and I would never want that to happen to anybody, so that's why I'm here." But then you also know, I have a job to do right now, and this is okay that I'm gonna blank this out because I know that me getting in there and doing the best job I can unconflicted with these thoughts, it'll get the job done most efficiently and in the best way possible. Or I guess my theory is I believe a lot of these problems that we go through when it comes to, the feelings of, numbness and disconnection and all those other things that we deal with on a daily basis. And like, uh, th- my theory is if we acknowledge that these thoughts are okay and that that's what we have to do as a requirement, as we do anything in life, right? Even if I punish my child, I don't do it out of anger. I do it out of the requirement. And then I don't attach emotion to it, right? Because it's not a necessity in that moment. And then we teach ourselves that when we're done with that moment, it's okay to have that emotion. I think a lot of the PTSD would probably vanish overnight. Like the real PTSD, like people who have real problems, not people who pretend. Like so like I just it's just a thought I had, like it's a wonderment. Like I wonder if a redirection of thought would have and can and has the ability to for an eternity to um minimize those things.
I think it's a mindset switch that it's No different than when I made this realization as a father, and where I could be reactive to everything that my kids did, or I could be more of an analysis as to why that thing actually occurred, right? Mm. And I can take this back to, we'll just use my son for example. I have a beautiful granddaughter that, and thank goodness my son is tough and, he made it through high school and whatnot, but he had a daughter before he graduated from high school, and I had two choices. I could either lose my mind on him and tell him how stupid and how irresponsible he was, or I could just be like, it happened and we have to move forward. That right there is emotional intelligence because you have the ability to look at a scenario that, well, yes, this is a significant life-changing event that is going to go on with him that he did not intend for. However, he did not plan to prevent. um, you can still set aside all your own emotions and be like, listen, there is a task that has to get done here. And that's the fact that I need to be there for him. And so that way he can be the strongest father that he can be. Now, while I'm saying that, and going back to emotional intelligence, it's being able to realize that sometimes it's not on your own. Like, I had to have somebody tell me, like, there's nothing you can do except for be there for him. And when we're talking about PTSD wires you to be reactive and reactive in multiple ways. Either you're going to be hostile
Yeah.
and you're going to start lashing out and you're going to be like, you made a gigantic mistake. This is the consequences. Now you need to be punished for that. Or it can be you emotionally shut down and you do not even know how to approach the conversation. So you just avoid it.
Right.
So for me, and this goes for anybody that's listening, is that if you're in a scenario where you can be emotionally charged, it's good to have somebody around that you can talk to, so that way you don't revert to, say, your military ways or your reactive ways where you're like, I'm going to come down and I'm just going to skull drag the person that I'm talking to, whether it's your child, a friend, maybe your significant other. And skull dragging just means a good old fashioned ass reaming. And it's probably one of the most demoralizing scenarios you can be through because we are trained to cut you down and to build you back up under what we view as the most appropriate version of yourself. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just gonna say, no, I mean, I agree with all those things, and I think, we can go into we can have this conversation all day long, but I think if any if you go and look at I think one of the best depictions of, like, because what I wanna ask anybody who's this is to think about the very first and I just, like, mumbled all my words together right there, but go back to, when you came back from your very first deployment, and if you've never been told this or no one's ever said a word to you or whatever the case is, um, when you come back from your first deployment, think about the very first thing you noticed about yourself. Did you even notice anything about yourself for one? Like, did you notice you changed or did other people notice you changed? And I ask this question because if you didn't notice you changed, that's fine, right? Because we all know we change because you kind of just start to realize the world's not, you know, AMC movie theaters and pretty girls. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you just started to, you got the real realization, the baptism by fire of what's out there, right? So you're gonna come home obviously, you're gonna come home different, but when you came home, who was the first was it you or others to tell you that, that you were different? And and if it's others, which I can more than likely say others, would be the answer, uh, did this start the process of other people telling you what's wrong with you? And, I only bring that up because if you so I'll share a quick story about this because that's pretty much what I'm good for. You're smarter than me. So it's it's a movie scene in a movie called Brothers. I don't know if anybody remembers watching that. I don't know, Matt, if you even remember watching
Oh,
this movie,
yes.
Brothers, with Toby
Yep.
Maguire.
Yep.
And there's a scene at the dinner table. There's multiple scenes at the table. I can't remember exactly all of them, but but every time Toby Maguire's sitting down at a table with people, he's pretty much just like staring at everything with this scowl on his face, right? And he snaps on his daughter at the birthday dinner and some other stuff. But I bring this up. Go back and watch that film and just watch those scenes. You don't, I mean, we all know, it doesn't matter what happened while he was in Afghanistan. Those things don't matter. But look at that scene and that dramatic breakdown. And then I point that out because my ex-wife, after she left me, we had a conversation years later where, she actually came back and apologized to me. It was, like, the first time I ever gotten a sorry from her in my entire life, and she wanted to apologize because she ended up watching that movie with her family members, and she was like, "That was you when you came home." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "I didn't understand that you never like, you used to talk." She was like, "When you came home, you like, I used to be able to say something like snide to you, and we would be in an explosive argument." And she was like, "And I would use that against you. I knew you would snap, and we would get into this yelling argument, and then I could, like, bring up things I wanted you to do, and then, once I got you to a certain point, then I would manipulate you with, our marital things and get my way." And this is what she said to me. She said, "But I didn't realize or I didn't understand at the time that the reason like, when you came home, I would do that, and you would just be like, 'That's okay, hun. It's not a big deal. We'll fix it.'" She's like, "I didn't realize that from that moment there, I would see you stare at walls and stare at tables. We'd be at the dinner table and stuff, and I'd be talking and smiling, and you'd just be staring and just looking at every little corner in every room." She's like, "I didn't understand that you went through something over there and that now you've changed and you're different for this reason here," which I personally did not realize that I stared off. And when I watched that movie back, I was like, holy shit, that is exactly who I am. I'm still that person today. And so when she told me that, my mindset had this idea like, man, something's wrong with me. I'm not that person I used to be. I'm a different human being now. Obviously the world's like, something's wrong with you, man. Something's wrong with you, man. Something's wrong with you. You went over there and something happened to you and something happened to you. And if you relive your thoughts, you'll say, dude, something did happen to me. And then you'll fight yourself with that other piece that goes, oh, it's not that big a deal. Right? And then here we are today. So, like, I don't think that we ourselves say something's wrong with me. I think people start triggering the idea because they notice something different about you, which is it's true in both scenarios, right? Something's obviously different. But then somehow it got turned into it's so different that you're broken.
Yeah, and that's a problem all in itself. You're not broken. You're wired in a different way.
Right.
And you're more mature to the world. You've seen things that the average human being has not seen,
Right.
whether you've been through combat scenarios or been under such legalistic leadership that you don't even know when to breathe. You have to understand that's just a part of your life. And if somebody points it out to you, then, try not to take that as a poke in the eye and try to take it as like, okay, maybe I need to reflect on that a little bit.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I think the reflection has to be purposeful because I didn't take offense to her telling me that. It was actually genuinely nice to hear that someone especially from her, that someone noticed something different that I had never even like I didn't see a problem with any of it because you're just so focused on getting the job done, right? Even when we come home, you're like, all right, here's your 7 to 14 days of you know becoming a human again, and you're pretty much just sitting in the big lines with all your guys, like, how many times do you have any drinks? And you're like, no, I never drink. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just playing that facade to the government, and then you come home, and then your spouse is asking you questions. You're like, well, I'm not telling her nothing, like so you don't tell them nothing, and then um, I think you just you don't even have time to even sit back and reflect on yourself. Um,
No, and you really don't because even when you come back from reintegration, um, you're thrown on you go on your post-deployment leave, and then when you come back, it's like, "Go, go, go. Let's reintegrate, and let's get back into wartime mindset." And so you really have no time to process anything.
Even on your 30 days of leave, if you get that, you don't even have time because
No, you really don't.
right, you go home, you're, like, meeting with everybody. Nobody and I'll tell you, nobody has anybody come see them. You can drive 18 to 29 hours to the other side of the country to come see your family where they lived when you left, and they'll still not show up, a 25-minute drive to the house you're at to say hello to you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you get home and you're like you're pressured to, like, go and meet all your family members and friends, and then if you're married or whatever the case is, everybody or if you're not married, people are wanting to like, "Oh, let's get back together. Let's go get some drinks together." And then you just start, um, what is it? Trying to refit in. You're no longer the circle going into the circle hole. You're the square, you know?
Yeah, you're trying to fit in, and you can't. You can't fit in.
Or you don't need to.
That too, you do not need to fit in with everybody.
No, I
Um,
I think what's crazy, Matt, is we want to fit in, right? We want to be a part of society. But the other part of our brain when you come back is now aware that society is a facade. And so you're really I'm just angry. I mean, for me personally, I was just angry that people didn't know what was out there and they didn't and they like I'm like, "How are you not looking over your shoulder all day? Like, how is your head buried in your phone? Like, I don't understand. There's threats everywhere, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you not know that it's almost time to get up and go? Like, how do you not pack your stuff the night prior? Like, how do you not prepared at all times? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you get into this, like, you start stressing yourself out because you're trying to right, I mean, you're trying to fit into something that you can't fit into anymore because you have a better understanding of what the world is than most people.
yeah. I mean, I listen to friends that are very successful. They run construction crews, they run all kinds of different teams and stuff like that. And where they still carry that mindset into that job now in civilian sector, where it's like, what the hell was wrong with you? Why are you not prepared for this? You know what? Screw you. You're done. Get off. That's it. You're fired. And we carry that mindset because it's like it's a survival mechanism, and we automatically correlate failure to, like, you're going to get somebody killed. I don't want you. Even in the most simplistic of jobs. Like I worked in sales, and for me it was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why do you not care? And you're like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't give a shit, and you're just gonna let your team fail? You're just gonna let them fail? Get out of here then. Get lost. And the good thing is that when you're in the civilian sector, and I say quote unquote good thing, is that you can just get rid of people. And you can't do that in the military, but um you start transitioning that thought process over, and you start treating civilians as if they are soldiers.
Well, what if we started teaching like, so here's my other question just popped in my head. It's like, we saw a huge change in the military when it came to, like, leadership standards, practices, like, who was actually a leader and who just held the title of leader, right? And, like, I remember being in, like, in the very beginning of my military career, and you found, like, there was a lot of really excellent, good leaders that you could probably throw, a wet napkin with your eyes closed and smack a good leader. But then, like, 10 years later, once we started introducing, like, um I don't really know if I wanna point out what we introduced into therapy stuff, but, let's just say 10 years later, you notice that the good leaders kind of vanished, and then the good leader title was there. So, like, everybody's a leader, but then you saw, like, the downfall of the military and how it started getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I wonder if that has something to do with, like, I wonder if, there's a contributing factor there that has something to do with we psychologically suppressed our emotions. The guys who were in war with these really good leaders ended up getting out because they couldn't lead correctly anymore. Like, they lost the ability to control themselves, and so they found their way out. They're like, I have to get out of here. I can't do this anymore." And then but we taught young soldiers who were like, instead of them being like, "Man, I wanna be a great leader like him," they built resentment for these guys who either held on too long or whatever the case was, and, it became more of a, like, big corporation, like, just make the partners happy. Instead of like, how does the organization as a whole and what kind of service does it bring? And I think that created like a giant leadership that just kept pushing the torch, like passing this torch on where there was no control over emotion, and which made you a poor leader, right? And then you just went by the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Checked all my blocks, and then that kind of like instilled an even deeper disconnect emotionally for all soldiers as time went on. Because you have no, because I'll tell you this, when I left the Army in 2017, the big reason why I left the Army is because I realized I couldn't give 100% of myself to the Army, but also give 100% of myself to my family. And so, because the Army was my first, I guess, love, or it is the priority, I gave 100% of myself to the, or like I would say probably before I left, like 80% of myself to the Army, and I could bear, and the 20% that I gave to, because I wanted to create good soldiers that knew I cared about them, that I didn't have that same veracity when it came to my wife and kids. I
Yeah.
wasn't able to, like, hand that back over. I didn't have enough energy for it. And I wonder if that is just, like, something that created this huge opening inside the military as a whole.
I think it did. And then I think you carry that to the outside
Yeah,
and you forget like where that came from.
right.
So when you get into the civilian sector, you have less empathy,
Absolutely.
and then you get these there's so many social media platforms out there that, or groups that, I would love to say that they advocate, but they really do not advocate. They applaud the trauma
Yeah.
and want you to understand that your trauma is valid. While yes, it is valid, but they also want you to stay in that traumatic mindset,
Uh-huh.
because if you stay in that traumatic mindset, and this is going to tick some people off, and I really don't care, but if you stay in that traumatic mindset, well, then you are going to increase their validity for their group.
Right.
And while you're increasing their validity, you're not doing yourself any favors, because you're sitting there going, okay, well, there's a million people out there that are just like me, and it's okay for me to stay in this mindset. And it's okay to acknowledge that mindset, but it's not okay to stay in the mindset. And like this question that Fong brought up to us is the fact that we love to wallow in our PTSD because it validates us as service members, as war veterans, as like, hey, there's something wrong with us, treat us differently. And
Yeah,
no,
and yeah,
don't treat us differently. Do not treat us differently. Understand that we are people that have been through traumatic experiences and we're just trying to adapt to society in the best way that we know how. But wallowing in that stuff is not going to make it okay. And if you're a service member that's listening to this and you are suffering from PTSD, which I myself am suffering from PTSD, Dan's suffering from PTSD. We have
Absolutely.
countless friends that are suffering from PTSD, but you cannot allow that to define you. You cannot. It's a
not a
part of your life.
not in the negative aspect.
No, you should be using it as a resource and
I mean,
no different.
lifting
Go ahead.
weights is traumatic, Matt.
Lifting weights is traumatic.
Yeah. Lifting weights is traumatic, but what ends up happening from it? If you lift them correctly, you get bigger muscles, you become better. So it's like if I can know I have PTSD, I can live in there, but I can grow that into the positive instead of growing it into a negative. I can create something I can create something from negative concepts. A thankfulness is a very helpful tool in that aspect, but I think the idea is that, like, you can hang on to it, but you have to hang on to it for the right reasons, for the right, you have to strategize with it. So, I think the idea that we labeled it traumatic stress disorder, I don't really care about definitions, you'll know every acronym and definition from the military and everything else way before I will. I pay 0 attention, partially because 'cause I'm lazy and the other part is because I don't care, but, um I think once you start understanding, like, what's like all the things we talked about when it comes to, like, you why do you distance yourself, the reasons you do it, all these are tools, like you said, like Darwin in 1980, it's survival, it's emotional survival, right? You create these emotions for survival. It's just instead of, like, the idea that, well, the reason why you can't hold your job or you can't do whatever is because you can't control your emotion because of PTSD. When it's the idea of like, okay, what emotions can I not control with PTSD? And then how do I turn that emotion into something that's useful? Like for my kids and my wives, like I used to feel terrible because I wasn't like the husband that like walked next to my wife and like held her hand like the whole time. But I have to explain to my family, hey, listen, this is what I am. I'm not going to change it because it's something that not a lot of people have. And now that I'm paying attention and I'm counting the exits, I'm checking corners of walls. When we're out in public, instead of daddy being stressed the fuck out because I'm trying to fit in to this place I don't fit into, allow me to do my damn job and use my skill sets to make sure you guys have maximum fun and I am not super irritated and angry with you because I'm trying to watch people's hands and I'm trying to make sure my kids aren't running off and people aren't getting too close. I'm trying to see if people are like watching me and my family, like, which is crazy to some people, but it's not crazy to us. Right. And so instead of me feeling terrible about myself because I'm thinking this way and everybody's like, you shouldn't have to think that way. And it's like, no, you damn well should have to think that way. And when we find ourselves in organizations or having conversations with other veterans who are saying things like, no, man, that it is really bad. Like, when's the last? Like, I don't remember one time where you and I were out in the middle of Afghanistan. I was like, "Oh, you fell and hurt your ankle? I'm sorry, brother, but you gotta get the fuck up and keep going." Like, you don't have a choice, but I'm here with you, and I think maybe that's one of the big problems is because we don't have a "I'm here with you" anymore.
I think you're right. But the ones that are I'm here with you, it's okay. Let's wallow in this together.
Right, exactly. Like, let's just be sad together and man, and I don't know, like, it seems like the more high-driven soldiers, and I could be wrong, but, like, we're talking about Brad. I know Brad personally, I've known him for a very long time, you know Brad personally. Like, I've been in 2 combat deployments with Brad, like, I know Brad and I know his mindset, and that's the kind of mindset that I gravitate towards because it's the same mindset I need for myself to become whatever I'm trying to be, and the idea is, like, why find yourself like, I understand that, like, maybe we get sad, and then we find these guys and we hope they're gonna help us, but and we think help is just like a feminine touch. And it's like, go get a wife or talk to your mommy about it. But when you come to the guys, I'm gonna treat you good because I love you, but I'm not gonna let you live in that wallow. Like, okay, so right now, Matt, Christmas Eve's coming up. Brad and I have the same exact traumatic experience on Christmas Eve. And I'm ashamed to say that since that day happened, uh-oh, I'm like break down in tears here. Hold on. I've
Oh,
yet
go for it.
to send out a message to any of the guys that I deployed with and ask him if they were okay. Now, I used to be upset because I felt like nobody cared about me when I left the army and we split from each other. And I'd be like, why don't they ever contact me? It's just, and that comes back from my childhood with my family, right? But uh and I can only understand that I'm so emotionally detached, and once I understand that these are issues, that it's not up to those guys to reach out to me, but it's up to me to reach out to those guys because I understand, "Oh, shit, I'm not alone doing this alone, and I'm feeling this way." They have to also be feeling that way, and that's why they don't come to me. That's why they don't reach out, and they have the same thoughts I'm having. But yeah, like you said, we get into the YouTube stuff, and we go and we get into these communities that aren't even our communities, right? I could call the whole platoon back. That's my community.
Yeah.
I could cycle back to the guys I know who had my back and see where they're at, and hopefully we can bring ourselves up to like that great level we were at.
Yeah, I mean, we have an entire thread and through text message, I got this baby labeled as the Curries.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that there's some warriors in there that have been through the suck, but they still will embrace some sort of happiness.
Right.
But for so many of us, it's too easy to wallow. And I'm gonna keep going back to that wallowing thing. But like you said, reaching out and understanding that there is others that are going through the same thing, why wait for them to reach back out to us or reach out to us? And that's that little bit of guilt that's inside of us. You're like, "Oh, shoot,
Yeah.
I should really reach out to them and see what's going on." My friend Rob, great dude, served with a 50 Deuce, 101st, and, I like to use him as an example because, for a long time, he decided to separate himself from everybody. He was like, "This is what I need to do for me." And he did not push his, um, everything that he'd been through onto others. And this is a mindset thing. He just didn't wanna talk about it. He didn't wanna talk about it with the VA. He didn't wanna talk about it with friends. He didn't wanna talk about it at all. But fast forward, I get here to, Pittsburgh, and he opens up. And he starts talking about this stuff, and he's like, "This is ridiculous. Like, why do I even still hold on to this stuff? And why do I take it into my work with me?" And it's because, well, shoot, one, you never processed it, and two, there's not a safe environment for you to process it in. And he's not willing to be patronized.
Yeah.
I love that. He's not willing to be patronized. And it's like, please acknowledge that, yes, hey, I did go through this, but don't make me feel like some kind of weak individual,
Right. Oh yeah, brother. Oh.
you
Hey,
know?
if you're listening, when you hear this part, comment because I want to know because when I first left the army and I got my first job, I I didn't tell anybody I had PTSD. I didn't say nothing to nobody. None of that happened. I got hired on, and the entire organization knew I was in the army. And maybe like 4 or 5 days into it, I started there was like there were, people talk, and I was getting information that people were like, "Yeah, oh man, that he's angry. He's got PTSD and da 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 da. Da. Don't, maybe be careful what you say to him." Like that's the stuff that was being said behind my back while I was working there. And they took it just because that because PTSD is such a great buzzword, right? It gets burned into your head to weaken you. Uh, that these random people already associated, oh, he was in the army, he definitely has PTSD. And so it's just more like more weight piled up on top of me to where it was like, why the hell are people thinking this about me? Like, what? Like, why is that the idea for me? So I just wonder if anybody, like, when they got out of the military and they're gotten their first job and they were like, "Yeah, this person was in the military was in said branch." Did you have, like, the same interaction, after you got out with people automatically assuming you had PTSD and then automatically treating you differently?
So I've never experienced that, but I mean, maybe it's because I was in the sales world, um, where you don't have enough time to even really think about that because it's so fast paced.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that I didn't acknowledge my own stuff and I carried it over into the job and I
Yeah.
allowed it to take control of what I was doing to the point where I became very hostile,
Yeah,
very
well, so
protective.
right. Well, that's what happened to me is I just became hostile after that. Not like choice made, I'm gonna be hostile.
It's a reflex.
Right, it was just like, "Oh, okay, now I know where now I know I gotta guard myself. So now I'm gonna turn on the scary face," the, direct line of anything I say to you is constantly direct. It's not like normal conversation you would have with, like, your friendly coworker. I'm just giving you direct information and walking away, which probably makes it seem more like you have a problem.
Well,
But
it does because I mean, like y- in the military, something like that is rewarded.
right.
You're considered uh a service member who can keep his composure under pressure, and that's praised. You hesitate in any kind of reaction, and that could be punished.
Yeah.
So we always constantly live in this mission first mindset, and it'll kill all emotion. And nowhere in our leadership values is emotional control. Um, no, let me reword that. In our leadership values, emotional control is rewarded, and if you don't have control, it's a vulnerability. So when we get out, if we don't have control over our emotions, our reactions, it's considered a vulnerability and we are essentially a weakness.
Right.
It's okay to be vulnerable in the right circumstances.
Right.
You got a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, you're in a group of veterans, i.e., whatever have you. But at what point do we draw the line and go, okay, we're going to stop leaning on this dysfunction that we have because that's really what it is. It's a dysfunction. And are we going to start going, okay, this is something that has happened to me and I'm not going to allow it to control me. I'm not going to sit here inside these groups and just allow my um my weakness to be praised, and it's okay to sit and wallow in that PTSD mindset, because PTSD is just going to make you react in ways that you don't want it to at certain times. It should not be all the time. And you should be able to, if you've sought help or talked about it with others, and I strongly encourage you to talk about this with other veterans that you trust, which is probably going to be the most therapeutic thing that you can do, is to talk about the stuff that you've been through with another brother, another sister that has equally been through the same thing, or at least can resonate with you in some way, shape, or form. You'll be able to move forward versus the veteran that is going to sit in a group that is just like, it's okay, you can be sad, society hates you, you're different. um PTSD, this was in my notes. PTSD is a badge, kind of like an award that gets to go on your uniform. And it's jacked. It's totally jacked because nowhere in our time of service did this become a standard for us to just be like, "Oh, it's okay." You know? No, it's something that's happened. It's no different than being punished. You know, if you're a leader that's I consider these guys very good leaders that can look at something that somebody's done wrong, and they're like, hey, listen, you messed up, this is the consequence. Okay, but I'm not going to hold it against you. You did this, let's move forward. Well, our wartime stuff is something that happened to us. We actively put ourselves in harm's way. We knew what we were doing. So why would we revert back to a world of feel bad for me when we knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into? And why not accept what has happened, build off of it, use it as a strength? I'm not saying you got to become fully vulnerable with it. Nobody's going to wants to go out there and talk about losing their friends. Nobody wants to talk about, I'm sure if we got Sergeant Hunter on here, he's not going to want to talk about Martha getting shot in the side of the head. He's not going to want to talk about it. But what he will want to talk to you about is the strength that he gained from that, and probably the respect for life that he got from that. You know, it's we have to start realizing as a veteran society that sitting in a pit of sorrow is not the answer, because you're never going to get better. You're just never going to get better. You're going to sit there. That's how this whole 22 a day with veteran suicide, how much of that is because we allow ourselves to sit and just think about all the bad, and we don't think about the good that's came out of that. And the fact that we signed on that line that is dotted and said, hey, I want to take the fight to the enemy, and I am willing to lay down my life for another. I think the moment that as veterans that we can start acknowledging that and being like, okay, this was the job that I signed up for. And yes, PTSD is very real. And there are some very traumatic things that we've seen and done. You know, ending somebody's life is not it's not a cup of tea. It's a necessity that you have to do in war. Um, Getting blown up is not something that's a necessity, but it's a part of war. I think the moment that we can start acknowledging these things and being like, hey, this is what I actually signed up to do, then we can start moving forward. and you can become more stoic about it because you can acknowledge it. And you're not going to sit there. You can, you can shed the tears. Yeah, nightmares are going to come, but the moment you start acknowledging these things and start moving forward, then we're not rewarding trauma.
Yeah. Feeding
We're
it.
we're acknowledging that trauma, but we should be rewarding the person that overcomes it.
Yeah, like how do we acknowledge trauma? What are like so for me the first acknowledgement of trauma that assisted me forward was um getting a baseline of information, pattern recognition or just understanding where these patterns came from. And so when I had to figure mine out, it was um so I have a problem where I never know what the date is. I never know, and it's not because I'm just, dumb or my brain doesn't work anymore. This is my coping mechanism to hide from things that were in front of me. So I just don't care what month it is. I don't care what day it is. I don't care what the number of the date is. And because that forces me to understand that there's significant traumatic events that happened at certain times and days. So I never wanted to even think about what day and month it was because you start thinking about those things. And so what ended up happening is I had to actually write down the dates because that's when I could actually start noticing that when I was like a week or two away from, let's say something that happened during deployment that was pretty traumatic. Like, I never thought like gunfire and some rockets flying over my head was pretty traumatic. That's never been like a traumatic thing for me. It was just a lot of fun. It was a great adventure. But it's like the worst things when you when you like lose buddies or you see kids all in pieces and stuff like that. Those are like little first timers. You're like, what in the like you know it's possible, but you just never seen it before. And now you got to see it, smell it, touch it, taste it. You know what I'm saying? All that things are connected inside your brain. But um, once I was able to start like going, oh, okay, I noticed that me for Christmas Eve, like a week or two, maybe sometimes 3 or 4 weeks before uh Christmas Eve, and sometimes it's after, I'll start noticing those symptoms getting worse and worse and worse. Especially like my anger and my inability to pay attention to anything. Like, so I'm just staring off into space again, like blanking out pretty much. And once I was able to start like figuring out those dates and giving them and calling them like anniversaries, maybe not the best word in the world, but it's just like how I was able to title it. And once I knew these things were coming, I could start like going, okay, am I just like depressed right now just because like, the weather's changed? Or is this like something that aligns with these issues? And then you start asking yourself other things. Like we start going into the other stuff we've talked about many times before. Like, all right, is my physical health okay? Is my relationships in my house okay at the moment? Have I eaten today? Like, have I eaten good food? Am I like taking care of my body, like with how I eat and stuff like that? Am I clean and showered? Is my hair, it's like,
You're
am
not.
I presentable to myself? And then, so like, if I can check all those blocks off and then I'm still having that problem, then I'm like, all right, this could possibly be one of those moments where I'm just deep in thought. And that's when that's when you're able to like start creating like habits for yourself, right? Like filling up those habits. So it's like usually 2 weeks before my anniversary, I just start picking the bottle up and I'm like, you're feeding into that traumatic experience, right? Because I don't know about anybody else, but every time I drink during one of those times and I start having those thoughts, like I get blackout drunk and then I'll be like crying in my neighbor's lap after I've kicked his door in and telling him about all the shit that goes wrong in my life and how war, saying like, this poor man's like just hugging some poor soldier who kicked in his front door. I'm not saying I've done that before, but what I'm saying? Like you start spilling the beans that you shouldn't be spilling, and
Yeah.
then you just subconsciously drunk or blacked out are just talking about the stuff out in the open and just bringing them all back up to yourself again.
Yeah. I want to kind of revert back to Rob here on this because I've heard him say a few different things, and he's just like, you know what? Fuck PTSD, dude. Fuck it. He's like, I hate it. He's like, because it alters your mindset, but he's like, where you'll mess up is when you allow that mindset altering to control everything in your life and tear you down. And this guy is he's a Bronze Star of Valor recipient. And if you read the narrative, it was actually I got the story from him. It was an Archon Valor upgraded
Nice.
to Bronze Star with Valor. And and he talks about it, and he's like, I shouldn't have gotten this award. And I was like, well, you got that award because you operated exactly how an infantryman should have operated, and nobody else could have done it except for you. And you save countless lives. And he's like, well, yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Like, I just did my job. And then there's other circumstances where he can't face things that he's gone through, but he doesn't wallow in it. He
Right.
does not wallow in it. But where I've seen it come out is in anger, is in anger.
Right.
And just to be
Yeah.
clear, I'm allowed to talk about these things. I have
Oh,
been given
nice.
permission to be
Nice.
able to
Nice.
talk about these things. I'm not going to give Rob's last name when Rob decides to get on and talk. And this little guy of about 5'5", that just kicked ass down in Kandahar. Um,
Those little guys always do, man.
they do, man. They always freaking do. It's like,
Him and Ski, man. I'm telling you.
yep, yep, yep. Old ski.
That's cool.
We were just talking about the ETAP. He went through the ETAP program.
Yeah.
And you would probably resonate with this really well. So he goes through the entire ETAP training course and he gets done with it. And they're like, does anybody have any comments? And he's like, I'm going to be honest with you. This shit's weak. Like, I got nothing out of it. That was the slowest run I've ever done.
Oh God, the ETAP.
And yeah, I just don't agree agree with this program. So, but that's the asshole-ish infantryman right there.
Yeah, man.
Um just tough guy mindset, but he does not allow his PTSD to control what he does in his life.
Yeah.
And if you heard his story and heard what he's been through, and the struggles, I mean, this dude's still kicking today. And he came back the same time that you and I did. Just his deployment experience was Kandahar, ours was RC East North. um, jungle warfare versus mountain warfare. And but he does not allow that to control his life. And he has leaned in on God, which is a very key thing. Um, and I know we have not touched on the spiritual side of things too much inside this episode, but and if it's not for you, it's not for you. But for us, it is. We lean into our spiritual side of things and we understand that we can allow ourselves to have control over all these emotions, or we can give it to God. And if we decide to give it to God, then there could be endless opportunities that come out of that. But again, if you're a service member that is sitting there and you're like PTSD, 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 and you're going to lean on that as a crutch and it's deciding factor of what happens in your life, then you're wrong. This is no different than you coming into the military going, I had X, Y, and Z prior to me joining the military. And now I'm going to lean on those things and be like, woe is me. We cannot sit in that mindset. We cannot sit in that mindset as combat veterans. We can acknowledge what has happened. We can get help for it, which you should be getting help for it. You should not be turning to one of these groups that's allowing you to sit in that mindset of it's okay, be sad, because ultimately what that's going to end up doing is just leading you down a path of destruction.
is why did you why like to every person who hears this, like why did you decide to quit? Like when you got out of the military or whatever the case is, and you're dealing with this PTSD, and then and not just anybody who's listening, but anybody who ever hears this, or when we're talking about these groups of guys who get together and are just saddy sad all the time, and they wallow in their filth, and they seem to like it or whatever the case is. It's like, why did you quit? Like, why is it that like when you left the military, you were like, all right, life's over. Like, why was that? Like, why would like, especially for guys? I can't speak for the females, but like, especially for dudes, like, why is life not a damn adventure for you? Like, why did you take PTSD and turn it into this thing that made you stop? Like, I don't understand that. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't make life harder. Like, you're absolutely right, Matt. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that it's there. It's okay to especially if you're like if you're at that 100% level, like, there's just like, severe PTSD, yeah, those things effing happen to you, they definitely happened, and yeah, they cause some issues, we can all fully agree to it. It's like, this has been going on for I don't know how many years now. We've been talking about the same shit, and nobody listens to it, but the idea is, like, why it's not that it's not hard on you, I believe, especially I don't know, I can't say that my stuff is worse than your stuff and your stuff's worse than my stuff. We always compare ourselves to each other. Maybe that's why we don't talk because we're like, well, like he was this dude, so how do I can even feel bad about myself and whatever the case is, right? But it's like at some point in time, you have to admit to yourself that you took that PTSD role or you took that woe is me and you turned it into some sort of flex. Uh, but the flex was just quitting. I don't understand it. Like I don't get why you quit, like, I'm not saying I haven't had my moments where I hit rock bottom and had a gun in my mouth, 100% I have, but the last question I ask myself is, "Why am I quitting?" Why is it why are everybody else's words in the world and the society dictating to me who I am? And why do you dictate to yourself that you're less than what you are? You went through harder things that 94% of the country is never even served a day in their life. You're the hardest person out there. Like, in the grand scheme of things, we are the hardest individuals to exist. Service members, police officers, it doesn't matter. You are different. You're built different. Why is it we like curl 50 pounds when it looks like we can only curl 10 and everybody's like built different. But then when I was like, now I can succeed anywhere I go because I've been in the worst environments. Like when people yell at me from across the street out of anger, I'm like, that's okay. People have tried to kill me before. Like, why is that not the thing I go to? Like, you can't kill me. Like, good luck. Like, so why is that not your mindset anymore? And if and like, why are we finding our way into the mindset of mush? Why is it that we're leaning into being sad? F sad.
Because it's easier, Dan.
It really is easy, but it's not because you just die faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to
Maybe
die
not
faster if you can just
physically,
do the other thing.
maybe not physically die, but the person you are dies.
Right.
And you end up into um this person that's just drinking themselves to death every day. And you end up as this crusty old veteran that just hates everybody.
Yeah.
And you're doing no good to society. You're really not. When we have so much to give. We have so much to give.
And society does it, like, let's just say I'm out there and I'm getting a little chubbier or whatever the case is, and I'm kicking back beers, and you notice I'm drinking all the time. And maybe you've never deployed me, but you're like the people I surround myself with, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, man, he drinks a lot." And then I've heard it a million times. Like, he drinks a lot, and da 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 da. And then people will say things like, "Yeah, man, he's a veteran. That's what they do." Or or we say the same stuff like, "Yeah, you know us veterans, we drink," and we like push this idea that, like, we should be getting drunk all the time because that's what we do, and that's our, that becomes your identity, right? That's your identity, and then you get out of the military, and then you maintain that identity for no reason, even though you knew it did no good for you there, and it's doing no good for you at home.
Yeah, it's a
Brother, you can't there's no such thing as self-help. You can't help yourself. You can't completely and totally by yourself help yourself, right? So, like I said, spiritually, I couldn't help myself. God had to do it. He's leading me through it. But God didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to be with you at all times." He said, "Hey, I'm going to put great people in your life. You have to go seek them out, and once you do that, we'll start fixing this process." So, and that's what you end up doing, right? You're like, I can't help myself by myself. I got myself to a point, but that point stopped somewhere. I just had nowhere else to go. I just didn't have the energy to keep going. I didn't have the support system behind me. And then I had to start reaching out to other veterans, and then discovering, like, why don't I just reach out to my own buddies too? Like, dummy. But, like, once you start doing that, you realize everybody else is in the same boat you are, and you can start working together to support each other and have that backbone, which we've heard a million times, even when we were leaving service, like, "Bro, reach out to your boys, da, 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 da," and nobody ever does. And it's only because we get busy and then we feel bad that we didn't, and whatever. But, it's I don't know, I think it's just wild that we think that self-help, like, we can self-help ourselves and somehow be successful when it's proven that even as soldiers, service members, it doesn't matter what you do. You can't do this shit by yourself. You can't do the job by yourself, right? So if you're not successful doing it by yourself in service, why the hell would you be successful doing it by yourself when you're out of service?
Well, I think over the course of the last few months, I've been able to reach out to a lot of different people that I've served with and have conversations. And I've heard this statement alone. And if this helps somebody, I man, I tell you what, the brotherhood that you had, if you reach back out to them, they're going to be there. They're going to be there. And that those conversations are more powerful than any VA therapy that you're going to take because it brings back the unity. And I mean, I just take a look at our conversations alone, Dan, where you and I have had some super powerful conversations, nothing cheesy, nothing weepy or anything like that. It's just like, damn, man, like shit, he's going through the same thing I'm going through, just like you just brought up. And you realize that you're not alone, and but that it's not okay to just sit and just hang on to that stuff. You know, everybody's moving forward. Well, shit, how did you move forward? And versus let's talk about our feelings and let's acknowledge, oh, it's such a good job. I'm so glad that you acknowledged your vulnerabilities and stuff like that. No, that doesn't work. That's not a warrior mindset. And we're talking about the warriors here, the guys and gals that have fought for this country, and you have an endless amount of resources out there, and those resources are your brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
And honesty goes a long, long ways.
this is like the only test where you can ask what the answer to number 7 is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can, like, if I'm stuck in a position and if I'm not talking to you, like, you and I have going through the same things, and then you say something that's like, "Oh, I've never thought of it this way before. I didn't put that into my perspective," or "I really enjoy the way realign your thought process there. I never even thought of putting it in that way." And then, like, that's me on the test going, "Hey, hey, 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 I can't figure out number 7 to get past this obstacle. How are you doing it?" And then, your buddy is the only one that's ever there, like, 7 is B. Like, you're like, "Oh, okay, thanks, bro." Like, because we're
right?
both trying to pass this test together. You know what I'm saying? So, um, I think it's just better to look at it from that perspective. You know?
Yeah. And if you're finding yourself in one of these groups where you're constantly stuck in an all-time low, then it's time to move on. It's time to move on because that's not who you were. That's not the warrior that went and fought. That's not the person that decided they were going to set aside all they're they're going to act selflessly and be there for the country or the man or woman to their right and their left. That you're not the same person. So if you find yourself in one of these groups where you're just going into a hole and they're rewarding your trauma instead of trying to build you so that way you get out of that hole, then you're in the wrong place. You're absolutely 100% in the wrong place. Dan and I don't want you there. Um, have we been in those holes? 100%. 100%. But you do not want to stay there. And rewarding trauma nowadays has become something that is it's monetary and it gathers a following. You're just sitting in a pit, man, and people are succumbing to their own traumas all the time. I don't want to hear about anybody succumbing to their traumas. And luckily for our group, I haven't heard of anybody, not yet. Um, and I hope I don't. There's guys that I went to Iraq with that have, um, and it's sad to see. And then I wonder how much of that is because society rewards the trauma side of things, not the recovery.
Yeah. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's just not a. I don't know, man. Like you could leave those groups, you know, but I guess the other side of that coin is you could stay in that group and you can be the one warrior that's sitting in it. Um, and I say warrior. And I'll give you I'll give you a quote from um, a movie. It's out of every 100, everybody's heard it before. Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. And but the one is a warrior, and this is my favorite part. And he will bring back others. Like, so the idea is that the warrior is going to be the reason why everybody comes home. So we can either be out of all those 100, we can be all the rest of them, or you can decide to become the warrior and start climbing out of that pit. And not while you're climbing out of that pit, but you're reaching down and showing people how you climbed out, and you're reaching your hand down and pulling them out of the pit with you, and you can bring them all back. That's just the idea of it, right?
Yeah. Brad brought up this excellent topic and I was honestly really surprised that this was the topic that got put up because it's something that people don't talk about. They don't. And like I said, it's easier to reward the trauma than to reward the recovery because the recovery gets you nothing if you don't have a bunch of, you got 10,000 followers that are like, my life sucks, you know,
Yeah.
let me sit here and cry about it. And that's not what we were made to do.
Yeah. I think it's okay to tell people in your life and your surroundings that you want them to be empathetic but not sympathetic to you. I think
Yeah.
it's okay to like address. I had to address that with my wife. Like she was like, I just don't know what to do. I'm like, you literally don't have to do anything. Just understand when I'm having a tough time. I'm having a tough time, but also hold me accountable. Like they'll be like, "Oh, he's allowed to act out because he's, because he's got a certain thing going on." Like, I think that's crazy, right? So even in the household around us, it's okay to like. Most people don't even know what to do with you, so most people just feel sympathy for you, right? And I don't think society did that to like maliciously. I just, like I said, like everybody I've ever talked to about this, they tell me the same thing. I don't know what, but you know what I'm saying. So it's just I think you can start even with the people around you is just letting them know that you're just looking for empathy. Like you have the ability to control yourself. So we'll leave you with this. Take a moment to reflect on your own stories and the ones that you carry through everything that was shaped through your service, your trauma, how you identify yourself within those things, and then the expectations that you have for yourself and then others have for you. And ask yourself whether that narrative that you've been holding on to is helping you grow or quietly keeping you anchored in the place you're in today. If parts of your story feel heavy or isolating, just remember that you don't have to navigate them alone. Reach out to someone you trust, a friend, a peer, partner, mentor, doesn't matter. Just someone you trust and start a real, actual, grounded conversation about where you are and where you want to be. If you, and I highlight this, if you are a parent, just take one small step back and look toward the connection with your child or your children in general, even if with your wife also. Um, be in the moment of presence, give them a gentle word, simple openness, because well, what we're going through now and the way we react in front of our wives and our children's that can be carried over into their future also, and the way they operate around other people. So, all this begins with connection and
I'll see it.
honesty. The
We
next
all
chapter of your life isn't defined by trauma or expectation. It's defined by the courage to move forward always.
thank you for listening. If this conversation brought you value, take a moment to like the episode and share it with someone who needs it. Your support helps us keep creating real, meaningful content, and we appreciate you being a part of this journey.